British? I mean, seriously, just.
Just so that the presenters have the opportunity to present without too much noise. If you have any questions, we encourage you to use the chat function. Nikki is running the chat section, so we will be able to answer some questions there. We might be some more detailed questions. So sorry, there was just a mute issue there. So we'll be running the chat as a question forum. So please post your questions there as Elvis commences with the presentation. If there are more extensive questions, we are going to have an open session towards the end for about 10 minutes, when we will answer some more direct questions, and we'll give people to verbalize those and address them. We then are going to give you details of our next session, as well as an opportunity for you to express any needs for any of our next webinars. So without further ado, I am going to be handing over to Elvis, who is going to be presenting on the topic for today, which is writing for the academic space. Elvis, over to you.
Thank you, Mars. I hope you can hear me.
You're loud and clear, Elvis.
Okay, thank you very much. So, as Mark said, we are going to discuss about some tips on how to write online, especially now when we are facing the challenge where most of our students or our colleagues, they have to work from home. However, we are not supposed to shut everything down. Even though we are working from home, studying from home, we still need to communicate with our students, to communicate with our colleagues in order to continue to be productive. So that's why we said, okay, let's first share these kind of tips on how to write online to make sure that whatever you are telling to your students or to your colleagues, all the instructions are clear for them to be able to understand and to do whatever you want them to do. So to do so, I'm going to share with you some online content that we have as Eiffel Corp we are using. And on those one, I think all of us can see my screen. We're going to discuss about clarity on how actually to write when it comes to online content. So if everyone can hear me, I can continue. And if there's any question, as Mark said, you're more than welcome to do it on the chat room. And then we'll be able to answer to your questions. Can I continue?
Yes.
Thank you very much. So as I said, once you write online, it's totally different of when you write on a face-to-face classroom or in the office with your colleague. So we need to develop some skills to make sure that once you write, and all the instruction must be clear to our colleagues or to our students. So the first tip, as you can see here, it's not what you say, but how you say it. Most of the time, we know we have some ideas, and it's much better or much easier to express yourself and become difficult when it comes to write it down. So when you deal with your colleagues, and especially online content, you must make sure that your idea that you have in your head, you must write it down properly. So the first step is to actually make sure that you speak to your target. You must understand your target, you must know your student, you must know the level of your student, and how are you going to address your student to make sure they do understand what you want them to do. Once we get that one right, we can see now the second step in make it easy to understand. And most of the time, it's here when the problem starts. And what we always advise lecturers or anyone to make sure that once you put your instruction to your students, don't make it too long. Try to use short sentence, simple verbs in order for them to understand what you are saying. And obviously, we know, and especially our students, they know that we are good in English. So what you have to do to make sure that whatever you write, don't use jargon. Because if you use those jargon and big words, most of them will get confused. And the most important is our students, they need, or our colleague, they need to access our content online where they're alone. You are not there as a lecturer or as a manager to give them instructions. So once they attend online, they need to understand the instructions so they can be able to do everything that you ask them to do. Otherwise, they'll log in, they don't understand anything, they'll be confused, and they're not going to enjoy or to understand your instruction or to understand what you ask them to do. As I said earlier, if you check this, the fourth one, the third one is about how to avoid a lot of text. And again, we need to avoid to make it text heavy. If you feel like maybe some component can be well understood by using a video, maybe you can record yourself and upload a video where you explain a specific topic to your students. If you feel like it's an image can go better, you can upload an image. And again, once you are giving instruction to your students or you're creating your content, think about different type of students. Remember, with the students who maybe they'll understand a topic by reading, some they'll understand a topic by seeing you explaining it, some they'll understand a topic by doing it. So once you do everything, please accommodate all those students. That's why we say you can include videos, images, diagram, cartoon, and any sort of media that you feel like it can be able, you can help your student to understand a specific concept. And once you are doing so, every time you want to put your instruction, you must make sure that everything that you write is concise and precise so that they can understand what to do. And again, once you know your topic and once you know your content, you must be able to express it or to write it down clearly for a student or for your colleague. We need everything that you put online, you need to have a title, and you must make sure that your title must reflect whatever it covered inside your title. So by just reading your title as a student or as your colleague or whoever, I can be able to understand, to have an idea about what this topic is all about and what can I find inside the topic. And after that, you can be able to discuss on how can you create your content and make it easy to scan. When we say easy to scan, to make sure that your content can be accessible by all your students, can be accessible by using any type of device. It's what actually we call responsive design, where your student, by using my smartphone, by using my tablet, by using my computer, I can be able to access your content. And again, once you type your content, we need to think about how do you present your content. You can decide to highlight some parts of your text. If you need one student to focus on it, you can put some bullets. If you want to list some content, you can include visual information, as I said earlier. You can put images, pictures, infographics, a table. It's you to decide how you want to do it. And again, don't forget to put some order into your content so they can see the logic, they can see the structure, and be able to understand, once I finish this topic, I need to move to the next level, and so on, in order to be able to complete all the activities that you ask them to do. So as we said, the list is long, but these are the few tips that you can use in order to make sure that your instructions that you give to your colleagues, your students, are clear and will be able to handle all your activities. By doing so, I want to show you an example of some of the content that we do create as Eiffel Corp. As we said earlier, we support our clients, universities, corporates. So you can see on my screen, for example, this is it's a simple example of a course maybe that you can create for a student. As I said, for example, once you write online or give instruction, you can see everything must be clear forward. You don't need to make it text heavy. Simple sentence, short sentences, simple verbs. Don't use jargon, to make sure that everyone will understand what will be covered into your content, into your course, and so forth. If you see, for example, module 1, pedagogy and learning, is under day 1. As I said earlier, you provide a title to your specific content. And by reading the title, me as a student or as one of your colleagues, I can easily understand what will be covered inside that specific topic. And then, for example, you can see in this topic, we'll discuss about learning principles, we'll discuss about learning theories, discuss about digital teaching and approaches. So those, as you can see, simple words, simple sentences, which have a meaning and make it easier for a student or easier for anyone to understand and to know what to do once they access your specific content. And again, because it's online, we need to specify student to specific a colleague to complete or to complete all the activity inside your course. For example, you can see in day 1, we assume, okay, all the activities or all the lesson will be covered in 6 hours. So everyone will know how much effort we need to put in order to complete a specific activity. And if I open, for example, day 1, just to show you an example of what we said, I said earlier, once you communicate to the student, you can use images. It's you to decide as a SME subject matter expert, how do you think your students will understand a specific concept? You can use an image, you can use infographics, you can use it. Once you do so, please don't forget to accommodate our students with a disability. It's most important, and make sure that we have different type of student in front of you by considering different type of learning styles. So whatever you put today, make sure that you accommodate all the students. So you can see we have some pictures with text inside to explain this different type of multiple intelligence. It's an example I just show you. If you click, for example, to a next item, you can see, for example, it's about the must read, and I put clear instruction where they must open a journal, go to a journal, and they can come back and discuss in the face-to-face classroom. Or again, they can discuss online. It's up to you as instructor to understand how do you want your students to engage with you and how do you put your instructions. Most importantly is make sure that your instructions are clear and it's easy to understand, because if you confuse your student or if you confuse your colleagues or any learner, they can't be able to understand, they can't be able to complete a specific activity or a specific task that you want them to do online. That's about the tips that I want us to go through. So I don't know if there's any question in chat room, or if maybe Miles or Nikki, they can jump in and to add something before I can continue.
Elvis, we haven't had too many questions at this stage. I think the context of the examples that you're given are quite pertinent. Maybe you want to speak a little bit about other examples where assistant writing has made a significant difference. And particular examples, I'm thinking specifically about a lot of the content development programs where we've been involved, where you've helped, in that case, university lecturers to try and amend their content so that it appears more clear. Is there specific examples you can share in that space?
Yes, we have. Yeah, we have some examples that I can share with some other content that we do with lectures, and we'll make sure that the. Let me try to share my screen with you again. I can try maybe any and see if it can help. Give me a few seconds. Sorry.
Well, Elvis is busy with that. I just thought I'd add something interesting. With the work that I've done with lecturers previously, the focus what people want to do is just give the students as much content as possible. And sometimes when we overload the students, this is actually does the absolute opposite, because the students feel too bombarded by all this information and then they don't look at anything. So it's really difficult to try and look at your content and decide what is really essential for the students to look at during this time.
Okay, thank you, Nikki. Can you see my screen, the one that I'm sharing again with you?
We can see it, Elvis.
Okay, I just want to give you an example of why writing is very important, and especially when we need to give instruction to a student. And this is an example of some work that we do with universities. I don't want to mention the name, but it's a university that will show you. And as I said earlier, it's as a lecturer, and especially by working with us, we always advise them to be able to communicate effectively with students. And as we said earlier, there's some part of the work where we can feel like it's much better for lecture, for example, to record themselves and to introduce a piece of work. So in this example here, you can see maybe when we start the course, we have a course welcome where a lecturer actually welcomes all the students. And again, I said, it doesn't need to be text heavy. You can see just 4 bullets. But if you go through this bullet, we have an idea about this specific course. And underneath, we have a lecturer which log in or record themselves and try again to explain the student, to give them an idea about what is all about this course, what we need to do. It's kind of instruction, kind of to engage the student to make sure that they do understand everything and how they will be able to complete specific activities. So this is one of the example that we do, and we have many of those. And again, we can see we have kind of unit outcomes, again, where the student must know what they'll be able to do at the end of the course. And again, what is most important here is about the activity. In each unit, the lecturer, the must tell the students what activity they will do, which learning can will be achieved after completing the specific activity. As I said, it's simple, straightforward, and it's short sentence. Don't need to make it difficult for the students. So they will know, for example, I need to read, I need to listen to this specific activity, and I'll do it in day one, and what type of outcomes will be achieved. So that's the benefit of communicating with students or writing online, to make sure that everything is clear. We are using simple words, we are using simple verbs, and the sentences are short and straightforward. And we have many of those that we do with lectures, just to make sure that that part of communication, that part of writing is really, really important when it comes to online content. I don't know if Nick can add, or Miles can add, or anyone in the room can add.
Hi there. Elvis, I don't know if you want to talk to them, to our delegates, about chunking large content areas.
Yes.
Maybe you can show some examples of that for the delegates.
Okay, what Nick is saying is very important. It's what you call chunking. It's normally, again, as I said earlier, once you are creating your content, you need to communicate to the student. You don't need to make it text heavy. You can't have, for example, an item with maybe 10 pages and put it online. Our students will get bored when they have to read those too many pages. So what you can do, it's you to decide as a lecturer working with us to show which part of your work can be actually removed, or a text can be transformed into an animation, to make sure that you do interact with students. Because if you just have reading, what will happen? You get bored. And in that stage, it means you just accommodate certain type of student and you forget other students. In order to accommodate everyone, you just make sure that your item or your content is not text heavy. You can remove some part of your content. You can transform it into animation that will do perfectly again, or you can transform into some infographics or into some diagram, to make sure that the information must be easily understood. And again, you must accommodate different types of students. That method, as Nick said, it's what you call chunking. I want to see the problem. What I'm doing here, we've done it already, where we minimize already the type of text, and to make some animation and to make straightforward.
I'm sorry, I was just to interrupt you there, because you've got such a great example there in front of you. I think we can all accept that we all scan pages. So the second there's lots of text, we quickly just scan it. No one really, okay, maybe I'm speaking for myself. We don't. What you can see there is that it's really nicely, what Elvis has done on this page is it's really nicely chunked, and it's also got headings. There's enough white space in between as well. Because if you could picture this page with all in normal text, without any bold and without the bulleting, it would be much more difficult to read. So these are things that we need to keep in mind when we do changing from face-to-face to online. I don't know if anyone.
Yeah, Nikki, I think you make a great point there, Elvis, as well. I also think that we also need to be sensitive to the fact that not all content is going to be viewed on a desktop PC or a PC screen. There's a lot of, particularly at the moment, there's a lot of students who are accessing new content or reviewing content on a mobile phone. So just thinking about those responsive design components, I mean, that chunking then becomes even more important, because we want to avoid scrolling at all possible, at every possible juncture. And then also, I think also telling students exactly what to concentrate on as well. We also, again, referencing a lot of lecture work, there is a tendency to kind of over-provide, because obviously there's a lot of material. So if we give students the opportunity to focus on specific areas, it's going to make, it's certainly going to provide them more guidance on which areas to focus on, particularly when it comes to things like assessment, which will.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Sorry, Elvis, I don't know if you want to just touch on how important instructions are on when we're doing things online, because we should never take anything for granted, that the student knows to click here or to do you know, do things like that. I don't know if that would be something we can also just show the delegates.
Okay, and thank you, Nikki. As we said, instruction is very important, and especially when it comes to activity, because our students, they need to get some instruction to know how to complete a specific activity. And if your instructions are not clear, the student will be confused and they're not going to understand how to complete a specific activity. I'm looking here and see maybe if there's a component where we need to give instructions. So I can show you a clear example. Okay, for example, as you can see, we have assignment 1. And we all know that once we give an assignment to your student, or once we give a specific work to your colleague or to your, or to whatever you want, those kind of activity or work, for them to be completed, you need to give clear instruction to your students. And this one, because you'll be there and you'll speak to them by giving them instructions. But once you move to online or fully online or blended environment, now you need to write those instructions. For example, you can see about an assignment. And if you just upload an assignment to your students without saying anything, they'll be confused and they can't understand how actually you want them to complete this specific activity. So we have some requirements before they can submit the assignment. And again, the most important when it comes to an assignment and activity is the use of rubric. Once you create a rubric to your students, it will help them to avoid the guessing game. So they'll know actually what do you want them to do in the assignment, which type of which component do you want to have in an assignment, and how are you going to mark that assignment or that specific activity. And by uploading or assigning a rubric to your assignment, it's going to make it easier for a student to understand what you want and how they need to complete a specific activity. So your rubric is part as well of your instruction that will give to your students to complete a specific task or a specific activity. Does it make sense?
Yeah, good points there, Elvis. I think it's also important to mention at this stage as well that you know, while the focus is on writing for online teaching environments, I mean, obviously the language that we use and the words we use are equally important as well. So I'm sure if anybody on the forum has got any kind of teaching experience or is trained as a formal teacher, you know, you'll know Bloom's taxonomy extremely well. You know, in recent times, Bloom's taxonomy is coming for a little bit of criticism because maybe it's not as relevant as it used to be. But there's certainly, there's still learnings within that, and there's certainly some good applications as to the way the terminology is used. So by habituating students with and regularly using the same types of language for certain types of activities, the expectation around the level of effort they need to expend to complete certain activities, and in providing those instructions to them around what it is they need to do, they can become that much more familiar with it. And obviously, as a collective, if more people are using it, the better. So it's a tried and tested use is Bloom's taxonomy. It's certainly something we try and I think this is potentially the opportunity with the situation we're currently in, to kind of reintroduce, refamiliarize ourselves with some of the sort of old logical applications, Bloom's being one of them, that, you know, still have some demonstrable value.
Thank you, Max.
Elvis, we've got 2 questions. I think. Do you think we can move on to these questions?
Okay, where's the question?
Okay, so the first from TUT. Yes. She's asking, what is the advice for universities in supporting students with connectivity and access to LMSs and other recommended learning sites? I think that's during this time as well.
Okay.
Let me just repeat that question because I know I spoke fast. Yes. What is your advice to universities in supporting students with connectivity and access to the LMS and other recommended learning sites?
No, I think the support the support that university can provide to the students, first of all, to make sure that the university itself has a Wi-Fi where the student can be able to access the university elements in order to access the content. And secondly, there's a new thread that is happening with higher education, where some universities, they provide students with tablets. All those first-year students, when they come in, they give them the tablet, and that tablet is data. So for that moment, it means what the student, they can't have any excuse to say they can't access an element because they've already a tablet with data, which they can use to access the elements in order to access the content of that specific university. Secondly, it's not only the matter of having the device, I think as well, the student must be trained, must have kind of student orientation at specific university where they can show the student, orientate the student on how to access this specific content on elements, how to submit an assignment, how to engage with other students, and so on. I think the infrastructure must count, and after that, we can provide devices, and especially again, need to orientate our students on how to access the content online by using any specific elements. I don't know if it is it enough as answer, or maybe anyone can add on top of that.
Okay, so Elvis, everyone's asking, so, but the problem is now, what are we doing now during COVID-19? Because obviously the students don't have access to campuses with Wi-Fi.
So Nikki, I just want to respond in part to that. In actual fact, this was a tweet that was put out by Prof. Laura Chernwitz at UCT. And I think it's important to recognize that, I mean, obviously you did kind of refer to this, is that most of the students that are, are having to deal with this issue are in sort of low technology environments. So maybe the most complex piece of technology they have is their cell phone. And obviously now being on campus and you're not going to be in Wi-Fi range. But there are still a number of other things we could potentially do that, we can help students without necessarily being able to access a piece of technology. So if you think about the low bandwidth environments, there's things like email. I mean, email is still working. It doesn't require access to the LMS. So students can still be contacted that way. We can still send assignments to them. Yes, it does require a little bit more work, but there is still the possibility for them to do that. Obviously, our readings as well, we can also send those to them, potentially also by email. And again, this is where the very topic of this webinar is really important, because we have to make it sure that they can read and understand it. Other things like discussion boards and those types of things, those are relatively low tech, low data consumptive, so they're relatively easy to access. If we're thinking a little bit further beyond that, things like collaborative documents, making use of things like Teams, group chats, and that sort of thing. So, where we have a bit more of a data-rich environment, we can start exploring those types of ideas. And then there's also things like pre-recorded video, pre-recorded audio, asynchronous discussions, those types of things. So I think this is also an opportunity to be that we are communicating with students, and obviously tied to that, how we're presenting what it is that they actually need to learn as well. So, I mean, certainly there would have been a lot of work that people would have done either in their sort of performance management systems or their content systems or LMS systems, whatever it is they're using to reach their learners or students, workers, whoever it might be. So I think we just have to be a little bit more creative. It's going to take a little bit more work during this time, but I think in doing that, we're certainly going to experiment with other means of contacting and being in contact with students, and potentially creating means of collaboration using an array of different platforms. So obviously, writing and communicating succinctly is critical to all of that, but this really is an opportunity for us to try things in a low that potentially have ubiquitous Wi-Fi, who don't have fiber links at home, and who have limited access to a PC and are probably communicating via phone. So I think we just need to be sensitive to that and think about some of these elements.
Thanks, Miles. I just want to answer, be cautious of time. So Kolisa, she asks, what is the best way to include YouTube videos that have already been recorded and are available online to cover some units of the content. Also, in this platform, is there an app that sends messages to students' mobile phones directly for interaction? Because I'm not sure. Oh, this platform being, I think Zoom rooms is what she's talking about in terms of the platform. Miles, Elvis, I don't know if you can add something there.
Thank you, Nikki. Can you repeat the question, please? Because it's two questions.
Okay.
The first one.
Let me do the first bit.
Video, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. What is the best way to include YouTube videos that have already been recorded and are available online to cover some units of the content?
Okay, when say the best use, I'm a bit confused because what I know, all the LMS, they do include the option of uploading a YouTube video into your course that you are creating you are creating for your course. So it depends. You can decide to embed your YouTube video inside your course, or you can decide to upload it by giving the student the opportunity as well. They can go through YouTube to watch that video if they can't watch it directly into your LMS inside your course. So when I say the best way, I think it's you to, as a lecturer, to understand your student profile, type of student you are dealing with, and to understand if they do have enough data, because once you embed it and they need to watch it directly into your elements, it means you are forcing them to have enough data to watch that video. However, if you provide them, you embed and you provide them a YouTube link, it means you are giving them two options. They can decide to watch it in your LMS, or they can decide to download it into YouTube and watch it later on the computer, wherever, when they have time. So I think the best way is to give them many ways of accessing that YouTube video to a specific subject.
Albert, and I think I can add to that. I mean, obviously, with the recent moves that the government has made, as well as all the service providers, they are zero rating a lot of educational sites as well. So obviously, those associated with university domains. So by locating a video, if you can download it and uploading it to the university LMS or site, whatever it is that they're using, then there's a good chance that they're actually not going to consume any of their own data when they're using it there. YouTube, I'm not 100% sure. I mean, certainly because Google caches YouTube locally, the data usage is going to be a lot lower than if they're accessing something outside of YouTube. So if you're potentially using a video service or a video from not within Google or not YouTube, then they're potentially going to be implications for data usage there. So I suppose the advice is, as you've got it there, try and stick to YouTube. Try and locate it within the university domain so that it's a zero cost base from the data perspective. And then I think also consult internally with your institution around what resources they have. Many workplaces and learning institutions, training colleges, sometimes have content servers such as like a media hopper, where they put the media that they're using as well. And again, because that's in the institution's domain, the student's not going to pay for that from a data perspective.
Okay, great. Going back to the second part of that question. Okay, so Lisa has kindly told me which platform she means, Blackboard. So they want to know if in Blackboard, is there an app that sends messages to students' mobile phones directly for interaction? So Elvis will give you more information.
Thank you, Nikki. And I think the new, if I'm not mistaken, I think Blackboard have created an app for the students, where we have an app for students and an app for instructor. And if a lecturer uploads some content in Blackboard, and if the students, they do have that app on the phone, they will receive a notification automatically. It's kind of it does work like give example of WhatsApp, where you can get a notification or can get information if someone sends you in chat and so on. For that to happen, the student must first download that app, student app, and install it in the computer, in the phone. Then they'll start receiving all notification from the lecture if there's any updates. And again, I think in Blackboard or in any elements, they have an option where if you give insight, if you create your content, or if you give an instruction to your students, you can always email that information or that notification or that announcement to your students. So the email will go to the email address that they do have in that specific elements. And again, they can receive the notification in the email address if they don't have an app of them. Thank you.
Thanks, Elvis. I know that Moodle also has an app. I think that you will need to speak to somebody at your IT or your educational technology departments. They will also be able to guide you there. The third question we have, I'm going to actually skip to the fourth question. We can come back to the third question, is Tando. They went to us in the teaching, and now that they see themselves having technology as the only option that they have to engage with their students. So let me just say that again slowly. So how do we support the lecturers that are still at the basic stages of using technology and have now found themselves in this COVID situation, and then and online is the only option that they have to engage with their students?
So that's a great question, Tando. And I mean, I think this is something we've actually been discussing internally for some time. I mean, this whole corona issue has obviously accelerated the need for outreach to students, and it is putting pressure on the level of skill that lecturers have now to kind of complete the academic year with what they have. I think the short answer is that in some respects it's almost too late in order for them to try and deliver, for instance, a fully online learning class. As anybody who's developed any kind of training that's meant to be presented on a virtual basis or even very blended, it does take some time aligning your outcomes to a specific set of tools and outcomes, aligning your specific teaching approach, deciding how you're going to moderate a particular program. These are the type of things that you can kind of decide overnight. However, that said, it's not all doom and gloom. I mean, I think there's a lot of things that lecturers can do specifically. And I think it's kind of in answering that question, I saw a comment there around, what can they use, what technology can they use immediately? Students are very used to using things like social media. We've come across many instances where, undergraduate programs, Facebook groups, they're using, generic chat tools to try and facilitate passing on instructions to learners, passing on material, making themselves available at certain times of day. So, there's the moderation aspect, creating separate groups for administration, creating FAQ pages on the LMS, so that students have at least some guidance around what it is that they need to achieve. I think at this stage, for any lecturer that has very little online presence or very little form of online course, by the time that they have a course ready for the students to use, we might be kind of, well, hopefully, let's hope that we're reaching the end of the sort of the COVID hibernation that we potentially going to go into. That could be some time. I'm not preempting what that might be, but as I said, it does take a significant amount of time to have a course ready. So I think exploring social media for one is one potential very quick method to communicate with your students. If you are fortunate in that you have a course site available or you have resources available virtually, you can then at least direct students to some type of activity on a daily basis or potentially 2 to 3 times a week around what they should be doing. And then importantly, as I said, making yourself available at certain times of the day to answer questions. And if necessary, and if it's possible and the capabilities exist, exploring things like virtual teaching. So if you have access to things like Microsoft Teams, setting up a virtual class at a specific time and date to be able to actually present a lesson. Other ones are ones like Zoom as well. There's the Google solutions as well. Many schools have those as well. So I think for the short term, that's pretty about probably what you can do. And then, again, you might have more time on your hands now that you're sitting at home. I think we are going to be very busy as we are. This is an opportunity to develop your course so that, should we have to endure a longer stay in our own domiciles, we're not going to be impacted as heavily.
Thanks, Miles. I think also another important thing is just to try and create a community of practice, because I'm sure that you know other lecturers out there that have been using online tools. Maybe get hold of them, ask for some expert advice. And I think this time can be very lonely for not only the students, but also the lecturers. So create some WhatsApp groups and share your ideas. There's lots of people with lots of knowledge, and you know teachers love sharing it. Okay, I'm going to go back to Tando, your other question. We've got a couple of minutes and then we're going to just move on. So let's quickly answer this question. If your learners have multiple assessments, they're supposed to, multiple assessments they're supposed to do or keep up with at more or less the same time, how do you ensure the flow of events so that they don't end up confused? Yes, okay, so what the example given here is that if the student's supposed to be reflecting on each unit, as well at the same time they have other assessments, how do we ensure that our students don't get confused and that there's a good flow of activities? I don't know, Miles or Elvis, if you got any tips there?
Yeah, thank you, Nikki. Before I can answer that question, when we say the student has multiple assignments, I want to find out, is multiple assignments in the same course or multiple assignments from different subjects? If it's a multiple assignment for different subjects, as well, we need to understand that our students, they must be able to plan, because there's a plan where they know today or tomorrow I must submit this specific assignment. So I assume the assignment is supposed to be done beforehand, and when it comes to due date, it's only about submission. So for me, if as a student, I have a pre-assignment from different subjects, which must be submitted the same day. If I have started my assignment earlier, I don't see any problem, because I just log in, wait, and submit the assignment. If those multiple assignments, it's on the space, it's in the same subject, I think for that one, maybe the lecturer must be able to reschedule or to make a proper plan where we can give a different time or different day for a specific assignment in order to, as they said, in order to allow the flow of the content to continue as normal. Otherwise, it's going to be a bit difficult if on the same subject, I have to submit the same multiple assignments on the same time or same day. Maybe the lecturer must check the way of constructing those assignments and the way of assigning the due date for specific assignment. But again, yes, if it's a different subject, I don't see any problem. The student must know how to plan, how to collaborate in order to submit the assignment in advance. That will be my take on that.
Yes, I think timekeeping is very important. And I'm going to focus on that now. We're running a little bit over. So what I want to do is the questions that we haven't answered yet, we are going to respond to either after Mal's session, or we will be giving you the answers or our suggestions, and we will email those to you after the session. If I can ask Miles just to give us a little bit of an overview about our digital training expert program, please.
Okay, thanks, Nikki. Yes, happy to do that. I'm just going to share my screen quickly. Elvis, as soon as you stop sharing, I can do that. Right, just checking everybody can see the screen.
Yes, I can see it.
Magic. All right, so I'd be remiss if I didn't use this opportunity to present everyone our take on digital teaching and learning skills development for educators. Some of you may have seen details on our program before, but I thought this is a good opportunity because it's obviously pertinent to the specific challenge we're associated with at the moment. So for many years, we've been doing skills development for educators. It's been one of the sort of core components of our training programs for many years. And we've recently developed and deployed what we call our Digital Teaching Expert Program, or DTX is the acronym. And the program is essentially focused on skills development for educators in various formats. So, whether you be a trainer in a corporate space, whether you be someone working in sort of schools area, sort of at the higher levels, higher education lecturers, or anybody involved in any kind of vocational teaching, that combining technology into your teaching program, as we've heard from some of the questions now and some of the responses from Elvis and others, it's not always an easy thing to do, and it takes a lot of interpretation for that to happen. So we've taken, our collective years of experience from presenting programs, within the university space and in corporate spaces, and we've created a program that focuses at 3 specific levels. So as you'll see from the slide here, the first week is Digital Teaching and Learning Essentials. And this is a 1-week program, usually presented around 4 days long, in which we focus on the fundamentals of digital teaching and learning. So as I mentioned, in our experience, we take that, learning theory is a given for most educators, but what we found is that we often have to revisit a lot of these concepts when we kind of we take on training at higher levels. So we've designed this program to focus on some of the fundamentals of learning theory and how it works, how people learn, how brain science works, sort of modern theories of focusing on how people consume knowledge and apply it. And we've interweaved that with a component of practical application of technology. And it's designed to be very generic. So when we work with an organization or an institution, university, whatever it might be, we incorporate many of the aspects that they potentially are using within the institution already, the typical tools that they use to complete their training programs, and we apply that to the learning theory, as I mentioned, so that it makes sense for those people who are tasked with either training students or workers or trainees, whoever they might be, into their learning program. And we associate that with a final assessment as well. So in the final assessment, as I mentioned, we require the folks who are presenting it to actually create some course structure around a virtual course or training program, whatever it might be. It doesn't even need to be virtual, but certainly there's some kind of planning involved, combining all of the concepts that we've introduced over the first 3 to 4 days. Then that really references some of that theory that's critically important. So things like outcomes, aligning effective outcomes to sort of digital outcomes. Our second week is then practical digital teaching, and we call this the PDT. And again, it's designed to be agnostic. So we work with various institutions, various LMSs, various learning platforms. And it's about taking the learning platform they have at place, applying the specific tools that they have been using or plan to use, and then aligning that again with some of the theory that's been covered in the week 1. And the actual reason we do that is so that by the time anybody who's gone through the course emerges at the end, and again, there's assessment associated with it, is that they actually have a practically built course, so that they have there's a number of tools that are now being applied. The content is integrated into the course or the training that they're planning to use, and things are aligned in a way that is going to be useful for students to then consume. And this is very useful for a trainer or a lecturer, because whereas before they may not have actually had a course that they could use, or they didn't really know how to start, now they actually emerge from the program with a course which is either partially built or relatively near completion, with all the content and all the artifacts in place in order for them to present it. Then our final week is the DTX week 2, and this is our exemplary digital teaching program. And this is really for those individuals who have some experience already in the digital teaching space. So whether it be fully online, supplemental, or even blended, it's for those folks who actually now have some experience in the digital teaching space I mentioned. And it's about mostly sharing practices. We start introducing things like sort of an advanced assessment methodology, how to evaluate quality for your courses. We start looking at the effects of personalization and demonstrated competency, how we integrate that into sort of more advanced digital teaching. We also even touch on things like analytics and the application of analytics, and how to start thinking about ways of developing formative measures for your specific program. And in a way, we're kind of starting a sort of collaborative space for those who have experience And the idea is that we share a lot of these practices. So we've done this very successfully on all of these weeks at institutions where we do them for a single institution, so we can share practices across disciplines. We also do them in workshops where we have very, very, very varied experienced practitioners of teaching and learning, again, at various levels. And it's amazing to see the level of practice and sharing that goes on, and how much we can learn from different disciplines as well. So as I mentioned, these are all 1 week each. Some vary between 4 days and 5 days. DTX week 1 and DTX week 2 is actually 4 days. We have a level of customization we can apply to all of these. So we are flexible in the way that we deliver them. And then the most importantly, and I don't have a slide for this, is that we are accelerating what we call our eDTX program. So that's our fully online delivered DTX program. It's fully digitized, so we don't actually come on campus. All of it is facilitated virtually. We also associate all of the same assessments with that. Currently, it's only focusing on week 1, and we can provide everybody that's on the webinar today with details of the outcomes for DTX week 1. I would like to mention that we have also, this program is accredited as well with the ETDP CETA. So we've taken the measures of doing that because we know how important accreditation is for any continuing training. So obviously there's criteria that's associated with that. If you would like more information, we have your information as a result of you joining the webinar today. We will send more information out with the slide, and that includes all details around how we facilitate it, how we present it, the materials associated with that. We have an extensive manual with DTX week 1 as well, which we're happy to share. We're just putting the final touches on that. And everybody who attends it gets the free manual as well. It's packed full of resources for you to use in your training programs. You also get access to the course site as well, which again, each facilitator, Nikki being one, Elvis the other, we also have other facilitators as well, will share all of their knowledge in those courses, so it becomes an excellent reference site for you as well. So should you plan to create courses or are in the process of doing so, you then have a fully enabled set of resources which you can then apply as well. So that's just some information about the DTX. Nikki, I think we're now moving on to the open question session in the little time we have left.
Yes, we've only got a few minutes left. So firstly, before we just do the last questions, I just want to say that this is a series. It's a planned series. So the next webinar that we plan on speaking on, it's actually going to be me. It's going to be how we engage our students online. So we will send you guys more information about it. It will be next week, if anyone's interested. Also, if you have any ideas or recommendations of things you want to talk about, please include them in the chat or email us, and we can try and include those in this series as well. Okay, so Elvis, I'm going to hand over to you. I think we can open the floor for anyone who has any more questions. Malivewe, I apologize for the pronunciation. We will get back to you on your question via email. Okay.
Thank you, Nikki. Yeah, we still have 3 minutes. Maybe we can be for open session. If there's any question, we can respond to the question.
Okay, I'm going to read you the question. What the question is there's a couple of institutions that are still currently busy with registrations, meaning that some students may not have access to Blackboard. Okay, I suppose this is any LMS. Can you advise us on available alternative technologies that can be used to enhance teaching and learning? This is to cater for those students that have not been registered yet.
Thank you for the question. I'm just thinking about the answer for that question, because as you said, it's busy for registration and they don't have access to the LMS. And as Miles said earlier, maybe we can find a different way. For example, for this moment, maybe the lecturer can use the social media to network, to communicate with the students. Can use maybe emails to tell them what they have to do while they're still waiting for the registration. I think that one can help for now. because if I understand properly, all the learning will take place into Blackboard or into LMS. And for them to access it, it needs to be registered first. So in the meantime, Lecture can find a way, maybe the student they can access the university website where there's some information, or they can use social media to communicate with the students, or they can use emails. I think those can be among the solutions that we can provide to those type of students.
I agree. Elvis, also just to add, I think most institutions have access to Office 365. So there is a great tool called Microsoft Teams. If you just Google it, you will, it's free to you guys. So to all the staff and students that have access to this, and it's also a great platform that people can possibly use.
Nikki, I saw that Sinwabo had a question. Sinwabo, maybe you want to ask a question?
Yes, thank you. I wanted to find out, is there a way on Blackboard that you can actually create a more interactive one-page kind of a course whereby the students it will minimize the number of clicks to a specific content that they need, whereby I can have everything in one page that I can actually separate, saying that this is week 1, week 2, week 3, but within one page, unlike using the learning module, because the learning module, it actually, especially for student view, it actually takes you to the clicks, whereby you have maybe click 3 times to get to the content. So is there something like that that will also actually help if you have some sort of a self-paced module that you can create within Blackboard, that even the students that actually register late, they can always go back and actually catch up in terms of what has been covered during the time that they were not in class or the register. So something like that.
I'll try and tackle that one. So a good question. Good question. I think there's a bit of a balancing act you need to watch out for there. So I mean, in terms of creating a single page, I mean, yes, quite that is possible to do that. I think sort of in the course design function, you just create a content page. Certainly, that's what you do in Blackboard. Give it a title, and then you can upload as much content as you like there. The challenge potentially is that you might have a lot of content. So I think you'd have to be quite creative in the way that you use certain files. You can create files, load content within them, provide clear instruction, as Elvis has given advice for, so that they know exactly what it is within that content, within those files, and what they're going to find there, and what activities are associated with that, and then locate all of that on one page. If you sort of have a limited amount of content, you might be able to do that a little bit more easily. But it could potentially be a bit of a challenge because of the specific focus and the sort of layers, and obviously the number of outcomes that you need to have associated with every single learning unit. So if you've got a lot of those, you're going to have to locate that within as far as students know when they need to access it. Alternatively, you can use sort of selective release criteria or conditional release, so that content only becomes available to them based on either behavior or as specific data is reached, or potentially even assignments. But yeah, I mean, locating it all in one page, I mean, there are some risks, but it is possible, absolutely. You just have to be careful how you do it.
Thank you, Miles. Nikki, I don't know if there's another question. Hello, Nikki.
Sorry, I got lost there for a moment. I'm back. I think time is up. So if I can just ask Miles. Oh, well, I can do it. I just want to thank everyone for their participation. Elvis, thank you so much for your presentation and for answering all the questions. Miles, also for your presentation and all those very detailed answers. If anyone wants to get hold of us, Yes, our email addresses have been shared. We are going to try and copy all those questions that we received and put some structured answers, and we can either share them on email or you might find them on social media, but we will definitely get back to you guys. And then hopefully you'll hear within a few days, you'll see on social media, we'll email you about next week's webinar.
Great. So thanks, Vicky. I think you closed it very nicely. Everyone. See you in the next one.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.